Okay,
But then,
I'd like to call this meeting,
I'd
I'd like to call this meeting of the Sustainability Advisory Board to order, please. This is the Sustainability Advisory Board meeting on Monday, January 7th. And I see that we have all but one of our board members here, so we do have quorum, and we anticipate he'll be joining us soon, too. The first thing on our agenda tonight is public comment, and I have to say, this is kind of awesome. Usually people don't even know we have this meeting, so it's really great to see y'all here. If you have something that you would like to address the Sustainability Board on that is not an agenda item for tonight, please feel free to come up here to the microphone, state your name and your address, and share your thoughts with us. If you do have something, I'll ask for that, that's on the agenda for tonight, I'll ask for that next, okay? So is there anybody here who wants to address any item that is not on the agenda, like bees or something?
Are bees on the agenda?
These are not on tonight's agenda.
Yes.
Okay, please come up to the microphone. Tell us who you are, what your address is, and go for it.
Okay, so my name is Nate Betker. My address is 1875 Woodstock Street, right by Traeger School there. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the bees. Mainly proposing a couple tweaks to the current ordinance to make it a bit more accessible to those who want to do some more sustainable beekeeping practices, and see if we can make those. Should I make those proposals, or what I'm thinking? Would that be good now, or?
Have you got them written down?
I do have the email from Mr. Betger. So if you would like to, you can. Otherwise, I have it here.
Great. Yeah, I can speak to him briefly.
Maybe just give us a synopsis
Yeah,
so
for
we know
sure.
where you're coming from.
Yeah, of course. So I tried applying for the beekeeping permit for next year, and came up against a couple difficulties. One, and I did a bit of research too on some other ordinances in other cities around Wisconsin, and found that ours was a little bit different in these ways. One is the dimension restriction for the hive, which I think makes sense and is good, so that people's hives aren't ginormous. But most what I found was that people had volume restrictions. Why this was significant for me is that there are a couple different kinds of hives. One is the one we're used to, which is in a box, and that would fit into the normal size restrictions. The other, which is a bit more sustainable for the bees, where they build their own comb, is called a top bar hive, and it's longer, and actually is better for the bees and more gentle. And so volume-wise, a top bar hive is less than what is on the ordinance, but the dimensions are a bit different. So it didn't fit, hence making that proposal. The other is what I found to be difficult, the Flyway Barrier, which I think also is an important thing and needs to be on there. However, in the other ordinances that I looked at, there was a Flyway Barrier required if the hive is a certain number of feet away from the property line. In my situation, where I would have the hive, it bumps up against a huge field. There is no residential property behind where the hive would be, and so a Flyway Barrier would essentially do nothing, except that I would pay $150 for a 6-foot fence and $85 for a building permit for said fence. So my proposal was to change it to be like other ordinances where there was a restriction or a requirement for a Flyway Barrier if the hive was a certain number of feet, somewhere between 20 and 30 from the property line. And I would say from a residential property line. Those are my two thoughts, and I can leave it at that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing, and thank you for doing that research. Is there anyone else who would like to address anything that is not on tonight's agenda? To be clear, the Bs are not on tonight's agenda. West Haven's bike lanes are. So was there anybody else who wanted to speak to something that's not on tonight's agenda? I know there's a lot of other things that aren't on there too, so maybe you're here for something else, but. Okay, then we will move on to public comment on items that are on tonight's agenda, which would include, though are not limited to, West Haven Drive's bike lanes. Is there anybody who wishes to address that? Jason and I both live on the other side of the tracks, so please come up to the microphone over here.
I am pleased to report that the car in front of me and the car behind me both turned off their engines.
Yes, we're getting somewhere. I love this. That's why you end up at the track to
became
check
clear
that
I was
out.
going to be here for 10 minutes.
Right.
People
Thank
shutting
you,
off their
Jason.
car.
We appreciate that. Okay, if you could state your name,
Jen
please.
Steinhilber. I live at 340 North West Haven Drive. I live in one of the 16 condos on North West Haven Drive between Witzel and Highway 21. I and my neighbors signed a petition to have parking restored on our street. We had originally asked for parking just on the east side of West Haven, as the west side is an apartment building complex with their own off-street parking. But Mr. Collins of the Transportation Department said having a bike lane on one side of the street would not work. We went to the Traffic Advisory Board, and they recommended a compromise allowing parking between Noel Court and Spring Mill Drive, which is on the east side of North West Haven. However, the next board, the Bike and Pedestrian Board, advised to leave the bike lanes in place and have no parking. So that brings us to your board, which will have an impact on what you advise the council. The 16 condos comprise of mostly elderly people. Each 4 condos have their own president and secretary treasurers, but we all do agree on having parking returned. Give us back our neighborhood so we can have parties, rummage sales, visitors of more than 2 at a time. We have 2-car garages, but you better make sure your cars are not too big, and you do not have anything else in your garages but cars and the bins the city requires. Our previous owner at our condo put in cabinets across the back and side of our garage, and as we have a minivan, that is the only car we can get in the garage. Our driveways are short. They back out right onto West Haven, and we can get 2 cars side by side, and that's it. The bike lanes are not used that much, as the city allows bikes on the sidewalk. And in our neighborhood with the traffic, you're better off being on the sidewalk. And just where would the bikes go anyway? You have 2 courts, Blake and Noel. Then you have security, which brings you back to Witzel or West Haven. Spring Mill is the same. And then you have Patriot, which has no outlet. The bike lane ends just before Patriot. I went around with a letter notifying us of your meeting, and no one else got this letter, in case you're wondering why more people didn't show up to discuss this. The ones I did talk to are elderly and don't like to drive at night, and then with the winter are afraid of falling. But they do agree about the bike lanes. You do not have any idea of how many people use the bike lanes, and I heard you have a 5-year plan to revisit and see if they are used enough to continue putting them in other neighborhoods. Just for the record, how many of you have bike lanes in front of your houses? 1? Over here, ma'am. Okay. Are there any questions?
Thank you for sharing. Does anybody else wish to address the board? Please come up and state your name and your address.
Hello. I found out about this meeting today, and I empathize with.
Could I have your name and your address first, please?
My name is Brian Keenert, 1647 Sanders Street, Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
I'm a avid cyclist, and I feel like I'm representing virtually the entire cycling community in Oshkosh, because when I saw the announcement, it was less than an hour from the meeting. I invited as many people as possible, and I received a lot of messages indicating they had no idea that this meeting was going to take place or the implications. So I did get some messages and some feedback that I can share on the other side of the coin, and I don't want to sound unsympathetic to the lady that just spoke. I understand that that's a dilemma. On the other hand, the bike lanes that are being discussed for removal are quite heavily used. There's a bike shop near there with at least 3 organized group rides, leaving in the evenings 3, if not 4 evenings a week. And it's also a major bike lane for people who are going to the YMCA from 9th. And ultimately, I think I used to be on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Circulation Plan Committee, and it took a long time even to get that plan off the ground. I'm not sure if anyone else in the room has lost people as a result of motorists and cycling accidents, but I know that when a cyclist and a motorist collide, it's nobody wins, and the cyclist sometimes doesn't make it. And I feel like I have to say something today to honor their memory. Ultimately, these cyclists are not going away. The sport is, and the recreation of cycling is increasing, and for a number of practical reasons. Ultimately, I know that this will have implications not only for the cyclists and the families who ride bike in that neighborhood on the west side, but it could have overarching implications for the entire circulation safety plan for bicycles and pedestrians, because then other areas and other people with the same dilemma will begin to say, well, if they were able to remove the bike lanes that created safety for cyclists in West Haven, why can't we remove them here too? Because we're going to run into this over and over and over. And I'm here to tell you, people have lost their lives as a result of a lack of awareness and a lack of infrastructure, a lack of amenities relative to creating safety for cycling and pedestrians. And if we start going backwards on West Haven, it's going to have a ripple effect, I'm afraid, that will impact the safety of families and cyclists throughout the city. And we just got started. It took a long time just to get that kind of safety infrastructure and amenities off the ground, and it's just beginning, and now there's a proposal to take them away. Now, mind you, I'm sympathetic to your concerns, and I don't mean to sound like I'm not, but you can't bring people back. And ultimately, the developers who own properties in that area, it would be nice to save them money by allowing their tenants to park on the street. However, if we have to put people back into harm's way as a result, I don't think it's a good trade. And I believe that this is going to have a negative impact on the entire community as far as a safety and a cycling-friendly community. I used to be the president of the Oshkosh Cycling Club and one of the founders, and I would get calls from people who either were hit, injured, or didn't make it. And so I know a lot of my friends have been impacted by the lack of safety in this community relative to cycling infrastructure. So I'm just here to present the other side of the coin, that there's some very serious safety concerns if we take away the bike lanes. Not only there, but it could ripple through the entire safety plan for bicycling and pedestrians. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Does anybody else wish to address the board? Please give us your name and your address.
My name is Judy Sealer. I live at 384 Northwest Damon Drive. I'm thinking of what you said about groups of people riding on the bike lanes. I have never, ever seen a group of people ride by our particular street. Our street is more like a highway. Cars just zip by terrible. And we do have some elderly people in my neighborhood. He rides his bicycle on the sidewalk for his own safety. And I do not agree that just because we have an issue with West Haven Drive, we don't mean to want to take bike lanes away from other areas in the city, but West Haven Drive is not a street that warrants a bicycle lane. And we have terrible time when friends are coming to visit. What if we're inviting elderly people that are in a wheelchair or who have a walker? Where are they going to park? They have to go halfway down the block, park around the corner. That's an inconvenience for the elderly people. And I don't speak just for elderly. I don't feel I am elderly, but I have a lot of groups I enjoy visiting with and having to my home for parties. I can't have them anymore because we don't know where to put their cars. So I agree with what he said, I really do, but I still say West Haven Drive does not warrant a bicycle lane. Truthfully, I don't think I've ever seen more than 2 people ride on that lane. So that's my opinion. I would like to see it removed because we need our parking. Not only that, that's decreasing the value of our condo. When we want to sell our condo, people are going to look at that bike lane. Well, they're not going to want to buy there because where are their friends supposed to park? Or where are their out-of-town families supposed to park? So that is my opinion on it. I do believe in bicycle safety, but I have never seen a group like he says that go out by the YMCA. They've never come down by us. So
Okay.
thank you for listening
Thank you,
to me.
Judy.
Hi, I'm Lois Yankee. I'm at 480 Northwest Haven Drive. And I have to agree with everyone here so far. And thanks for listening to us tonight, because this is a really big concern of ours. On our street, we, down in the next block from Witzel to 9th, there is parking in front of St. Raphael's Church. They do have a bike lane and parking on the east side. We would like to see that in our stretch, which goes from Witzel to 21, or to Security Drive. We'd like to see parking on our east side, because that's where all the residential is. They're condos. We live in a single-family home, and there's 3-4 of us there that have single-family homes. And it would be so nice to be able to have the parking on our east side. The west side is totally apartments. They don't need the parking on the west side like we do. And this summer, we had a really bad accident in front of our home. A lady was arm's length away from being run over on our sidewalk, and that's even with the parking lanes in there. The guy clipped off our mailbox that went down to our neighbors who are here, clipped off the utility pole and the hydrant right there. The traffic on that street is very, very fast. And you're taking your life in your hands in a bicycle lane. It's better to be on the sidewalk actually there, because the traffic on Northwest Haven is so fast. It's just very unsafe. So, and our driveways, as she said, are very short. We can't get the cars parked there, and it's very inconvenient. So I really would like to have you consider putting the parking on the east side from Noel to Spring Mill in that section. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Sorry. I'll be very brief. My name is Ed Pollux. I live on 460 Northwest Haven Drive. We are not trying to take the bike lanes away However, we would like parking like they have by St. Raphael's Church. I believe that street is the same width all the way down from Highway 21 to West Haven subdivision. So why isn't it possible to have a parking on the east side like they do at St. Raphael's Church? That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Carl Tix, 386 Northwest Haven Drive, Oshkosh, and I will not use that bike lane. For one reason is the volume of traffic is for one of the reasons for a safety purpose. And like I said, I will not use it. It's not good. I would like to, for my part, you can take that bike lane out completely because I won't use it. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Tim Greenwald. I live at 2491 Spring Mill Drive, which is on the corner of West Haven and Spring Mill. So yes, I'm not here because of parking. I'm here because of safety. I live right next door to Don, the Yankees. She was talking about that. You know, in the 10 plus years I've lived at my location, I'm on my third light pole at this point, 2 fire hydrants, and God knows how many street signs that have been knocked down. We're on kind of a short bend right there, and any way we can move traffic away from the curb would be appreciated. Cars come flying through there 40, 45 mile an hour. And very quickly, if you want to find out if your heart is working, stand in my parking. Close to the street, when I cut the grass, blow snow, it's very dangerous. People come right up, even with the bicycle lanes now, they drive down, you know, the bike lanes aren't that wide, they drive almost on the curb anyway. Any given morning, after a weekend especially, you can see tire tracks over my yard where cars have come up my driveway and then gone on by the corner. So I'm concerned from a safety standpoint. And the farther we can get the traffic away from the curb, the better we are. And like they said, with the way that St. Raves is designed would be actually a better way to go about this.
To clarify, Tim, does your driveway
My driveway is on West Haven.
It is on West
It
Haven,
is
although
on
the
West
house
Haven,
front's on
yes.
Spring Hill. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board tonight?
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Duringer. I'm with the Winnebago County Health Department, the health department that covers the city of Oshkosh. I'm a community health strategist there, and my specialty is working with bicycle, pedestrian, and active transportation improvements in Winnebago County. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the public health implications of why we would encourage having bicycle lanes, not only on West Haven, but a comprehensive transportation network that includes bicycle lanes and throughout the city of Oshkosh. So one of our major concerns, along with everybody else here, is for safety. The road width, the vehicle volume, and the vehicle speed warrant dedicated bike lanes on West Haven to accommodate all types of users using all types of modes of transportation. This includes choice riders, kind of like what Keith was talking about, people that choose to ride a bicycle, whether it's for transportation or for recreation, but it also includes those non-choice riders where bicycle use is their only mode of transportation because they don't own a vehicle or don't have a driver's license. And this is also another reason why West Haven was identified on the plan, because it is a wider road that has higher vehicle volume and vehicle speeds. So having a dedicated separate space for those bicyclists to use actually improves the safety for all users. Second point I'd like to point out is that streets are public shared spaces. Streets, like I said, are public shared spaces to be used by all residents in a variety of ways. And this is for people that live on that street, people that travel through that street all the time, people that go through that street every once in a while. So it's important to have a variety of uses for all those public shared spaces that meet the needs of as many users as possible. Third, again, another reason why West Haven was identified on the bicycle pedestrian plan is that West Haven is a major connection street between residential and commercial and service kinds of areas. So on the south end of West Haven, you have a lot of apartment buildings, some low-income apartments, and on the north end, kind of where it connects up with 21, that's where you've got your shopping and your healthcare and your grocery access and all those kinds of amenities like that. So again, going back to people that choose to use bicycling as a major form of transportation, or those who don't choose to use bicycling, but that's their only option. Having a dedicated bicycle lane on West Haven, which is a major thoroughfare for people that drive cars, is the same reason why people that would be using bicycles would want to use that road too, because it's the easiest, fastest way to connect from point A to point B. So those are most of my comments that I brought here related to public health. I also want to bring up the connection between connecting with people and the importance of making social connections. So I totally understand and get the need to have people over to your house and have parties and those kinds of things. That's really important, especially for mental health of residents and that's something that public health is very aware of and is interested in improving. But weighing all the options, connecting with folks, the safety aspect of making sure all users are able to use that roadway, I would say would outweigh the benefit, or would be a bigger influencer on why West Haven should have bicycle lanes. The roads that are a couple blocks from people's front doors are a couple blocks from people's front doors, but there are adequate sidewalks for all users to use. And the point that was made about bicycles being allowed on sidewalks in Oshkosh, that is kind of an anomaly in the state of Wisconsin from a policy standpoint. Most local municipalities don't have ordinances that allow bicycles on sidewalks because it's a safety issue. People that are in wheelchairs, people that are using strollers, people that are carrying large amounts of things. There's a conflict there when there's someone on a bicycle and someone that's meeting up with that. So a lot of times if the sidewalk isn't cleared all the way or it's not wide enough, you can have kind of a conflict of interest right there. So someone has to get out of the way or someone has to get off the sidewalk in order to make that happen. So the safest place for people to ride their bicycle is actually on the road. Whether or not people think that that's safe for you as an individual user is your individual user choice, because in Oshkosh you can ride your bike on the sidewalk. That's not something that I would recommend, but I know that there's a lot of people that don't feel comfortable riding their bicycle in the street. But in Wisconsin, a bicycle is considered a motor vehicle and they have the same rights and responsibilities as anyone driving a car.
Does anybody have any questions for her?
I have no more comments on things that aren't very loud.
Did you speak before? Yes, you did. Hold on, okay. I have some questions for Emily. And I'm going to remember what it is in just a second. Okay. Could you explain to us what this particular section of the bike route, because you kind of have this whole picture in your head of how it works in Oshkosh, right? Mm-hmm. As well as how that connects to Winnebago County and points north.
Sure, right. So west of 41, there's not a lot of roads that connect north and south for any great distance. West Haven is one of the ones that's first off the freeway that has a long stretch connecting north and south. And when you're trying to build a regional transportation network that includes bicycle accommodations, you want to plan it just like you would plan for people driving vehicles on major roads. So everyone wants to use the shortest the shortest distance route from A to B. So West Haven was one of those. If you wanted to take your bicycle from the apartment complexes south of 9th and didn't take West Haven, you'd have to take all kinds of squirrely roads and routes to get to where you wanted to go, which is really inconvenient for anyone that needs to get from point A to point B on a bicycle. From a regional connection standpoint, the Oshkosh Bike Ped network connects up with other major regional connections like the Weeawash Trail. The plan long-term is eventually connect out going east-west over to the Mascoutin. These routes are intended to connect to the Tribal Heritage Crossing that does run right up along 41. Ultimately, we would like to see the ability for someone to take a bicycle from very south side of Oshkosh or very south side of Winnebago County all the way up through Appleton and beyond. That's something that's like a 20 or 30 year kind of plan, and that's why we do this kind of planning work, because you have to start somewhere, and if it's not written on a plan, you can't get grant dollars to help fund some of these things. And if in order to implement these accommodations, you have to piecemeal them a little bit here, a little bit there, eventually leading to a full transportation network. But roads are planned differently. No one questions whether if a road is going to go in, if it connects up to another road. That's pretty much what happens, is standard. So for bicycling and walking accommodations, more scrutiny is often taken into account for those things. But these are the kind of accommodations that are for the most vulnerable of users.
And what is the advantage to having a bike lane if there's a bus line that runs the same place anyway?
Right, good question. So there's a phrase that we often use is first mile, last mile. So oftentimes a fixed route transit system. So for example, on the west side of Oshkosh, there are a couple routes for GO Transit, none of which go to the DMV, which is technically the driveway for the DMV is in the town of Algoma, which is not served by GO Transit. That's a whole nother story. So if someone needs to get to the DMV and they don't have a vehicle, because they might need to go get a driver's license. Think of like a 16-year-old kid, right? 16-year-old kid hops on their bicycle, connects up to the GO Transit stop, puts their bike on the front of the bus, takes the bus to the furthest point north on that route, then hops back on their bicycle and crosses Highway 21 at an intersection with a stop and go light, and then can connect over to the DMV. Something like that. So having a bicycle connection along a transit route is really important for people that need to reach places that aren't served beyond where aren't served beyond where the transit routes go.
And as I understand it, you can ride a bike 24 hours a day, but you can't take the bus 24 hours a day?
Correct. The buses only run like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So if you work second shift or you work at the outlet mall after hours, your bicycle might be your only way home.
Okay, did we have specific questions among you people for Emily?
Can I say something?
If you have a question for her, yes.
The question I have is, why does the bike lane stop on West Haven almost 2 blocks before you get to Aurora Festival? There's no bike lane there. So you're talking about these people having access to Festival or there's no bike lane. All of a sudden it stops.
Right. So I'll say I don't know the specifics as to why that particular stretch of West Haven doesn't have bike lanes. I will say it's double wide, right? There's 2 lanes of vehicle traffic which aren't necessarily striped that way, but they might be actually not. I'd strike that. I'm pretty sure they're striped as 2 lanes right there. But generally what happens when you're implementing bicycle or pedestrian amenities, the intersections is where it gets really squishy, because all of a sudden the road is one thing to like make improvements on or put new striping on or whatever, but then once you get into the intersection, then that's crossing into a whole nother like lane and direction of traffic. So a lot of times the amenities stop short of the intersections, which is not safe and not what we'd like to see. But again, it's little steps here and there. So the next time that chunk of road gets done, they might look at that, something like that. So a lot of times it's a cost-saving measure as well. And did you have any other, you were like gonna say, and then
I was just gonna say, I'm gonna have to ask you to repeat the questions from anything over here because they won't be, and that's okay. We got it from you.
Okay, from the answer, but context clue.
That's where I was going with that.
Sorry, I can do that.
I have a question for you. After 3, the bus does not go by our condos anymore. We have to go up to Aurora now to get the bus. So we've lost that bus lane because the bus doesn't come there because they didn't have enough people to use it. Secondly, I understand what you're saying, but okay, if people would ride their bikes by our condos, Nancy has a good point. They have to stop 3 blocks before they get to Festival or Aurora. And I have never, ever seen anybody come by my home, even on the sidewalk, with bicycle carrying groceries, mind you. You're talking about people need to get to places.
Is there a question here?
It's a question. Why do we need, why are you saying that they need the bicycle lane so they can get to those places? Why do you feel they need to use our condo area to get to the grocery?
Not a public discussion, folks. Let's let Emily respond to this first.
Yeah, so the point that you're making about how you've never seen anyone using the bicycle lane or the sidewalk carrying groceries, unless you're watching it 24/7, 365, there's no way for you to know who's using that sidewalk or that bike lane.
We know, we all live there.
But that's why we do counts with infrared and pneumatic tube counters to actually get the hard data that would show who's using those. It doesn't show you if they have groceries with them or not.
I would like to invite you to come to my home and stay for a day.
I'm pretty sure that's not the greatest use of taxpayer dollars for me to sit out in front of your home all day. So anyways, so the point that I'm making about, so the question is, why are there bike lanes on West Haven, which is a connector between residential and services, and why are there not bike lanes that connect up into Festival and going forward that? So where the bike lanes end is where the 2 lanes, road lanes begin, correct? So generally, if someone's riding a bicycle, they will take the right-hand lane, and if anyone that's driving a car needs to get around them because they're not going as fast, they have a whole nother lane that they can just go into the left-hand lane. So that is a dedicated space, even though it's not marked as such. It serves as a dedicated space for those bicyclists to use that right-hand lane, so everyone that's driving cars can still use the left-hand lane and keep going forward. I don't really have a great answer for your question for why are we putting bike lanes in for people that use their bicycles to get places, because that's the right thing to do. If you're building infrastructure for cities, for people that are residents of these places, the infrastructure should be built to accommodate all types of users. Everyone in Oshkosh does not drive a car. Everyone in Oshkosh does not have the same type of access to everything. So that's why we put accommodations in, like sidewalks and bicycle lanes, to make sure everyone with all needs and all abilities has an opportunity to get to where they need to go.
I have one more question then. Do you think one person in that whole complex of apartments ever come out of their parking with a bicycle?
I'm not sure we're asking questions that she can really answer. Remember, she represents the health department and the total plan. And I think we're getting into the minutia here, and we're not going to do that here. We understand your concerns, and I'm sure there's all kinds of anecdotes that we could all share, but I don't see that that's going to benefit anything. Is there anyone on the board that would like to address a question to Emily? Jason?
Emily, do we have an infrared counter on West Haven? So we know?
So I looked after the traffic advisory board meeting, and it doesn't look like that we've had anything at all that I know of in the last couple years, but that's something that we can put in there this summer. We can put in a couple different kinds of counters to get some count data on that.
What's the speed limit on that street, and why can't
Posted speed limit or actual speed limit? Because they'll all say that it's way higher than whatever the speed limit is, which I agree with.
why isn't it enforced?
So posted speed limit and actual speed limit are just one factor in the multitude of safety features of what makes a road safe. A lot of times it's the feeling, the comfortableness of someone's comfort feeling of using a bicycle or walking on a sidewalk, not just necessarily like the actual infrastructure being built there. From law enforcement, I couldn't tell you. I don't work for the PD.
Okay, I do see two other hands that have been up for a while. I'm going to give you each just one question, and then we're going to move on. Brian, you had something to share earlier.
Well, if people are routinely going well over the posted speed limit, I don't believe the solution would be to remove the bike lanes. I believe, why don't we just introduce speed bumps to make people behave?
Thank you. And
If you could just consider what they did in front of St. Raphael Church. I don't know how that got to be the way it is, but that's how we want it by us.
Which was stated before.
And a parking lane on the
Yep.
east side. That would
Great.
solve it all. I'm not against bike lanes, and none of us are.
So I can address both of those comments a little bit. And again, I work for the health department. I'm not an engineer. I am not a traffic person. I'm not a highway department streets person.
or a doctor or a lawyer.
I only play one on TV. No, so from an engineering standpoint, and we talked a little bit about this at the Traffic Safety Advisory Board, and that was kind of where the idea came up of like, could we still have both sides of bike lanes and put parking on that width? So the stretch of West Haven down by St. Rafe's is a little bit wider, even though it's literally we're talking a foot or two, and that is the difference. It is a foot or two is the difference. So.
Narrow the bike lane.
Well, so right, so the bike lane standard is 5 feet in Wisconsin. So right now, the part up on the northern part of West Haven is 2 5-foot bike lanes, and the rest of the width is travel lanes, and that is a 15-foot travel lane, if I remember correctly, from Traffic Advisory Board. The part down by St. Rafe's is literally 1 or 2 feet more, which means then you can have 2 5-foot bike lanes, an 8-foot parking lane, and you still have enough width for 2 12-foot travel lanes. So we're literally talking about 1 or 2 feet difference here. So if you cut the bike lane width down to 4 feet, that's not standard, and I'm not sure if DOT would even allow that to happen. There's only certain circumstances in the DOT guidebook that allow for that to happen. So I know that was a compromise that was proposed at the Traffic Advisory Board to look at that. So there would have to be some engineering and more research done on if that would even be possible. But then you're talking about, if that would to go forward, you'd have to talk about pulling off all the existing paint, doing the little scratchy, whatever they do. Again, I don't work for the streets department. And then restriping all of that. So it's something that, is that possible? Potentially. Would that be the best for everybody? I don't know. But the part down by St. Rafe's, that width, the full width is a little bit wider, and that's why there's a full parking lane there.
Thank you.
Marty,
Is
can I
there-
jump in?
Yes, please do.
I'm actually on the council, and we passed this in May of 2017. And on the analysis, it says, let's read a paragraph here. West Haven Drive is 40 feet wide, other than the West Haven Bridge, which is 30 feet, which allows for 8 feet of parking on one side, 2 5-foot bike lanes, which is DOT standard, and 2 11-foot driving lanes, 1 in each direction. Because the road narrows on the bridge, bike symbols would be placed on the bridge and the route continued on each side. Due to the pavement width, parking needs to be removed on one side, the west side recommended to fit bike lanes. The removal of parking on the west side of West Haven in this area would remove to park approximately 33 vehicles. So it is what it is. It's stuck. The road's 40 feet wide. I mean, there's no wiggle room really to get to get parking
Right.
on both sides.
Yeah, and I will say that narrowing travel widths reduces speed. That's a good thing.
Yep.
Previous,
Look at Main Street.
Previous to the West Haven lanes going in, there was no striping on that road at all. So that meant you had 20-foot travel lanes, or sometimes people didn't understand that was one 20-foot travel lane and thought it was 2 10-foot travel lanes, and then you'd have people passing and all this other kind of weird stuff, which also is a big traffic safety
And as
hazard
you
thing.
go into the future and look at bigger cities, bike lanes are our future. They're not going away. There's going to be more. Like when you look at the more progressive cities like Milwaukee and Madison, they have busier streets with more bike lanes. So, I mean, unfortunately, whichever side you're on, that's kind of our future.
And it's a sustainable future,
Yes.
actually.
Yeah, it's better to ride a bike than drive a car. So.
Is there anyone else on the board that has any questions for Emily? Okay, then, thank you so much, Em. I really
Welcome.
appreciate you coming and sharing with us.
You're welcome.
Okay, that then will conclude our public comment, and we will go back to our agenda. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from December 3rd. I know y'all read them, right, and studied them tightly. Could I have a recommendation for?
So made.
Okay, we have a recommendation to accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, then. The next thing on our agenda is the actual discussion of the West Haven bike lanes. We all had information that we were given beforehand that showed us what the ordinance was that was written in May of 2017 and passed by the council that brought the current bike lanes there. We have the recommendation from Jim Collins, our transportation director, and a little bit of background on what went on at the other two or three boards that have already weighed in on this. And Stephen, do you have anything additional that we need to be aware of?
Sure, I can talk a little bit. So I didn't have as much in your packet as I would have liked. I did put the original council, the ordinance, and the council memo from Jim Collins. That was from 2017, so when these first went in. These bike lanes were in the pedestrian bicycle circulation plan. Basically, I think the route runs basically from 20th, in some form or fashion, from 20th all the way up to Highway 21, more or less. You know, it stops a few blocks, whatever. But the actual bike lane starts at 9th, and I believe it goes up to Patriot. So, you know, we're kind of looking at this, more or less this area here. If you want to be technical, really from Witzel up to Patriot here. It's kind of the area that we're looking at. This map was produced for the Traffic and Parking Advisory Board meeting last year. So this is what Transportation Director Collins gave me, just to kind of give you a visual of what we're talking about here. It's kind of nice to have a map of some sort. So typically when these things, from my understanding, I'm not directly involved, but my understanding of when these things are done, they look at the plan. You know, they have this whole plan here that's a guiding document for bike and pedestrian infrastructure here in Oshkosh. This was originally passed in 2011. It has been going through an update. Last year they were working on that, and I think they're close to trying to wrap that up. But they look at routes in that plan, and they try to implement those as they're able. So in 2017, what I was told was what they do is they notify, or they said that to me that they notified the residents. Now, whether or not they actually did, I can't say one way or another. You know, I'm not directly involved, but I was told that they sent a mailing. Then it goes typically through the Traffic Review Advisory Board, then the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, both of which are advisory committees. They don't have any decision-making power, kind of like us for the most part. They advise the council, the Plan Commission, the council, depending on what the issue is. Went through those two committees, then it went to the council for action. The council approved the bike lanes. Right now, my understanding is that there are 2 travel lanes and 2 bike lanes. As Emily mentioned, a 14 or 15-foot travel lane, a 5-foot bike lane on each side. What happened was that was in place for a little while, and then a petition was circulated last year and received October 9th, 2018 in the city clerk's office, basically asking the city to remove the bike lanes on the east side of Northwest Haven Drive between Witzel Avenue and Highway 21, more or less. Wanted to put parking back in there and re-implement that. In response to that, there was some discussion, and we as staff, and I believe at the council level, they wanted some input from boards such as this one. So Traffic Review Advisory Board weighed in on this again. Bike and Pedestrian Committee also weighed in, and now it's to us for an opinion from all of you. There are a number of options here. One is to do nothing and leave it as it is. So the 2 travel lanes, 14 or 15 feet wide, the 2 bike lanes of 5 feet, no parking whatsoever. There is the other option, which is to take out the bike lanes altogether and put parking back in. Or the third option, which was more or less the compromise, where basically you would narrow down the bike lanes and the travel lanes, and you would add a parking lane on the east side of Northwest Haven. between Spring Mill here,
Where's that going to,
right there, Spring Mill.
yeah?
So that'd be the northern boundary there, and going down to Noel down here. So this segment here would be what's in question, essentially, where alterations would be made from what the current state is now.
Oh, I see.
Yep, so if you can see that, Lurton.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep, so from,
In this area right here are condos, right?
I believe so, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody?
Correct? Through here?
16 condos, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's kind of the area we're looking at. Like I said, traffic review, they weighed in, they recommended restoring parking to West Haven between Noel Court and Spring Mill Drive, so kind of that segment I showed you, on the east side of the street, and narrowing the bike lanes to 4 feet wide. So the road being 40 feet wide, this would allow the 2 4-foot bike lanes, 8 feet for parking on the east side, and 2 12-foot travel lanes. That's basically what they recommended. The Bike and Pedestrian Circulation, or the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, excuse me, they recommended leaving it as is. And so that was kind of their standpoint. And then, whatever you all, discussion you want to have or questions that you have, I'll do my best to answer. Otherwise, we can discuss it and take action tonight, or we can lay it over and try to get some more information. It depends on the discussion, I'd say.
Okay. Thoughts?
Steve, are there any, this might be a question we just need to get more info. Are there any roads in Oshkosh where we have bike lanes less than 5 feet?
That I would have to look up,
Yeah.
because like I said, I'm not the staff person, unfortunately, for bike.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm thinking is I live off of Irving, right? And they have parking on one side, bike lanes on both sides. And I've used those bike lanes before, and just off the top of my head, I don't want to say they're 5 feet. I want to say they're shorter than 5 feet.
Oh, sure.
It might depend on what kind of road that they're on too. Like if it's a slower moving road, it might be 4 feet. If
Yeah.
it's a higher, like
Okay.
what's the speed limit in this area? 35?
25.
Posted 25?
And Irving's 25 as well, but yeah.
Supposed to be.
Two-lane
And
city
frankly, at
roads
least
are all
on-
supposed to be.
And I know like on Irving, people aren't always parked there, especially during the day. So people, when they bike on that lane, they bike where the cars park too. They scoot over a little
Oh,
bit
yeah.
outside the lane.
For comfort, yeah, I can definitely see that.
So I guess on that note, if there is, I guess I don't see what the hang-up is if there's an opportunity. If we have bike lanes smaller than 5 feet, I don't know why a compromise isn't possible.
Does that add up to parking on both sides yet though? Because I mean the road's 40 feet wide, 8
No.
feet for parking.
No, they're only asking
Believe-
for parking on the east side, am I
Just on one
correct?
side, yep.
Yep. And then that would still allow for parking all the way along on the opposite of the road.
On that segment, yep.
Yep.
Does anyone, and I don't know if this is valid or not, I taught driver's ed, but I don't ride bikes, not very well. I tend to go flipping off of them. Is the curve there a problem as far as having bike lanes and parking lanes? I don't know if you can address that, Emily, or if,
Just because it's not straight?
well, yeah, I'm curious if that creates additional hazards or if that slows people down so it's not an issue, or those of you who ride bikes.
I mean, for bicyclists to follow a curve? Is that what you're asking?
No, so it's the line of sight for people driving cars when they're going
Oh.
around those little curves. And that was one of the gentlemen that talked about how he had a bunch of accidents on the corner where he lives. He's right on one of those curves. When you have cars parked there, it creates more things for people to have to look around or see around. So having cars parked on the curves could create more of a hazard than you're anticipating potentially.
Yeah.
And this was me quoting Steve Herman from the Traffic Advisory Committee, or he's law enforcement guy.
Got it. Thank you. And thank you for being there when Steve was talking. Okay, so that's a little bit more information to throw in for us. Other thoughts?
So then if West Haven is supposedly a 25-mile-an-hour street, and Irving is supposedly a 25-mile-an-hour street, the idea of a 4-foot bicycle lane seems pretty reasonable.
And a compromise seems like a very reasonable thing. They need their they want their parking back, and a block and a half worth of extra parking. Maybe some speed bumps on that street would do some good, or some stoplights.
Oh,
or
that's
something.
quite a bit longer than a block and a half.
Well,
It looks like, no, see, each one of these
Block.
is another block.
Oh.
So it's a long stretch along there.
well, I never get to that side of town, so
Yeah, it's not on your bike especially.
Or like,
well, it's frankly it's too dangerous to ride a
It's
bike
like 12
over there.
Well, it's like halfway between Witzel and 21. It's that long of a stretch that we're
Okay.
talking about here.
But it's still on the east side of the street,
Just
and
the east side of
it would
yeah.
seem to accommodate a larger number of people's desires.
33, because there's.
One thing that was mentioned that maybe we should discuss is things like speed bumps and enforcement. If this is, and I've driven down that street, I know it's a lot like a raceway. And if you're not in an ambulance going to the hospital, I don't see why you have to be going 35 down it, but most people do. That's probably the actual speed that, or higher, that was being addressed earlier. Might we throw that into the mix and say we'd really like to recommend stronger enforcement
Absolutely. It would,
as a safety factor?
as a safety factor.
I mean, especially if you're making the lanes smaller, that makes sense.
And you
Oh.
do need 2 lanes as you get toward Festival and Aurora.
You do.
Because
Yeah.
the
So
person
many
who
people
wants to
turning.
turn left, if there's only 1 lane, has to wait until the other people stop and then all the people behind. So you need 1 lane to wait and go left while the rest of the people can keep going.
Yeah,
straight on
otherwise it
through.
causes some severe backups, and that's not a good thing. Yeah, transportation would not be appreciating that.
And I don't think your dedicated bikers are really turned off by high-speed cars going by them. I grew up off a road that was like 55, and there would always be bicyclists on the road, and there's just cars going by and by 55. So I don't think all of them are turned off. Some will be if they don't bike frequently, but
More casual
yeah.
cyclists might be though.
yeah.
And again, going back to the safety issue, the higher your speed, the flatter the bicyclist ends up. Again, speaking from somebody who can't manage to stay on the bike real well.
I'd like to hear what Pat says, because she bikes a lot.
Well,
I
I don't
would
actually
too.
bike that much. I'm more of a casual bicyclist, but yeah, a busy road with fast cars I don't like to be on. I'm not hardcore, I guess. You know, I've ridden my bike from my house up to like Primo's, and I found out you can't do it on that road, the road, on Bowen, but you can do it on a parallel road where there is a bike path and less traffic,
Right.
but on a busy road, yeah, I don't like being on a.
It's not
on a
comfortable.
fast road, busy road, yeah, but.
Which means that you tend to ride your bike less and drive more because you don't feel
Right, or look
safe.
for alternate bike paths, yeah. But
Which
yeah.
is,
Yeah, there's
again,
certain
not leading
places
to
where you
a
wouldn't-
sustainable, walkable,
Right, there's certain
bikeable
places I wouldn't
community.
feel comfortable riding my bike if the cars are going 35 or 40, yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely not be in
It's not like
favor
one
of
of the
pulling the
concerns
bike
of
lanes
people
out.
living there is the fact that the cars are driving too fast.
Lurton had something to share, or a question, or a thought.
The thought is the point about the streets are for all users. And it's a difficult thing when you have people who are adversely affected in one area, and yet what might be good slightly for all the city, such as moving toward more bike friendly, and that's a very hard calculus, as the council member would know. Do. And one of the reasons you have long-range plans, and plans in general, is to try to help you navigate that difficulty. And unless you have a good reason to, for us, in this 1-hour meeting, to overrule what a committee designed to think about this and investigate and go look at, would be hard for me to do.
Thank you. Michelle, do you have thoughts? I know you ride your bike a lot.
Yeah. In my opinion, there has to be a bike lane of some sort that stays on there on both sides. because I myself have ridden along there. I've ridden on the sidewalks here, and people don't look on the sidewalks for bikes. I mean, if they don't look on them on the street, they certainly don't look for them on the sidewalk. I've had to jump off my bike as it slides because someone pulls up way above the stop sign and almost hits me because they don't see that I'm riding on the sidewalk.
Or they back out of their driveway and they're not expecting you to be there.
And they look in the street, they don't stop before the sidewalk. And I've heard of people who have been greatly injured because nobody's been watching and their daughter got hit.
It can also happen to a child on a trike or somebody
Right.
walking their
Or
dog.
pedestrian, but bikes go faster.
Yeah,
So
they come up
it's-
on you faster.
Yeah, so it's a lot easier to not see that beside your house, or not see that there, and then all of a sudden they come and, that's kind of a tough one. I'm not sure about how everything will work out space-wise if we do the compromise, but I think we at least have to have some sort of bike lane there. I myself have biked along that way. I mean, we're a one-car family. Sometimes I have to go to a doctor's appointment in the middle of the day. I can't have the car so that my husband can get my son from school at another point. So I have to,
Yeah.
you have to do something. And so, sometimes people gotta use it. And I think we have to be progressive about this, and we have to find a way to make it safe and accommodating to everybody. So,
And to help Oshkosh move towards more one-car families, frankly, or more or less traffic on the streets or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I know that was pointed out about the city of Oshkosh and why we don't have more people using other forms of transportation is that we make it too easy for people to ride or to use cars. I don't think necessarily, if you have a lot of elderly in a condo, that they necessarily have a lot of other options for transportation either, always. And I'd like to be accommodating if we can, but I also don't want that to get in the way of the safety either. So I'm really not sure what the solution is and if the compromise is safe or not. I guess I would need.
Hey, we haven't heard from Adam or Vic. Do either of you have any thoughts you want to share, or no pressure?
Yeah, I really have to agree with what you said. I mean, we're the Sustainability Advisory Board, right? So, our focus at heart needs to be the sustainability of the city, and that's bikes. That's that future. They go pretty hand in hand, as we've talked about at length at many meetings. So, ideally, I'd like for the bike lane to be there and end game no matter what. It needs to be there. If it's safe to make it 4 feet, yeah, it'd be great to compromise. But if that's going to compromise the safety for bikers, then that's not sustainable either. So I guess I'd really like to hear if 4 feet is an acceptable length for a bike lane. If so, then we can move forward with that. But until we get that information, I don't really feel comfortable agreeing on something tonight, to be honest.
With, not length.
Sorry, with, my bad. It all came out at once, sorry.
It won't get you very far.
No, it really won't.
Adam?
Yeah, same here. Given the other options with Oakwood or the frontage road going north-south, the bike lanes themselves I don't think are an option. It's just whether or not we can accommodate the parking as well, if it's feasible.
I would like to give a lot of weight to what Lurton had to say about the long-range plan of this. I know, having done our own plan, we have an idea, even those of you who are just helping update it, that's all we're doing, just updating it now, right? Yeah, that only takes a year. I know how much goes into a plan initially and how carefully everything is thought out and discussed by all the parties that have come to the table for that steering committee. And I guess if I were to have to choose between a compromise or sticking strictly with the plan as it has been, I would err on the side of sticking with the plan simply because it is a well-thought-out plan that had been a part of a larger picture. It's one puzzle piece in a huge puzzle. I think no matter where we make change anywhere in the city, it's always for the good of all, but the people that are impacted are not the ones that are going to like it. I saw this so many times when I was with the school district, with different committees, and it's always good, just do it somewhere else. And so I'm not belittling your concerns by any means, let me be clear. But I do think that we definitely need to make a recommendation to leave the bike lanes. I would not not support anything saying take them away. I guess then our only decision is, as a board, do we want to recommend that they stick strictly with the plan as is, and basically that would fall under the do nothing because it's already there? Or do we want to make the recommendation as a board that we go forward with compromising with that east side parking anywhere where there's adequate space for it? I'm pretty sure they're not going to rip up all the streets and make them wider for this. And I'm pretty sure people wouldn't like that anyway because that would impact their front yards. So as we found out on Oregon Street, people, yeah, that would be change. Yeah. So with that said, is there anybody willing to make a motion or make a motion to table this for next month if you feel like you need more time for thought? Those are basically our options. We do have a few other things to do tonight, so I don't want to belabor this any longer.
I think we don't have we're one of several committees that make a recommendation to the council. When would you take this up? Is it how much
It's already an
difficulty
ordinance.
is it to delay or not to delay?
It's already an ordinance. I mean, as an advisory, we could just say we're going to pass on a recommendation and let the council make the decision solely, with other recommendations. I mean, it's already an ordinance, like I said. It's just a proposal to reduce it to one bike lane on one side.
Yeah, well, when would you take up the proposal to reduce it?
It's not on an agenda right now, so I mean.
So we could wait, and I would go out and look at it again. I do drive that, and they do go much too fast.
I mean, we can't stripe nothing in the winter anyways, so nothing's going to change right now. So, I mean, even if we pass this in April, it's not going to go into effect till May or June.
And I do think this is one of the more moral decisions we have to face. So if it's not a bother to the council, I'd like to take it up next time we meet.
So I just heard you make a motion to table it for tonight and
did.
put it
You
on
did.
this agenda.
I thought you-
Could I hear a second on that?
Oh, just question, is this a motion to table it until our February meeting or
Right.
until the
And
spring, later in the spring? when-
February, I
okay.
think.
Our February
February,
meeting.
decide
Okay.
then. In February.
Yeah, because it's going to
come
have to
in
go
with
on
it.
the agenda by end of March. So
Put it on
we
the
gotta,
agenda for
we got to
February.
have direction by February with it.
Now that we've had so much input on it, it does give us a little time to cogitate on it and decide what makes sense to us.
Yep. And then could Steve then in the meantime check on 4-foot bike lanes and whether
Yeah.
those are acceptable and if we have those anywhere in the city?
Critical decider.
Seems to be the holdup for most of us.
Yeah, just whoever can give us kind of a good brief on, what makes it safe, is that safe, what we want to make sure is in place before we go making a recommendation for it.
But if we went down to 4 feet on the bike lanes, it still wouldn't be enough room to have bike lanes on both sides with this
I think that's something
recommendation.
you need to verify.
We're
They'd
only
narrow-
concerned about
make
the one
the-
side.
Because it's
Take
40 feet, the 2 drive lanes are 22, the 2 parking lanes are 16, and then, it comes out to 40.
I think you'd only have
Be one.
one parking lane.
One parking.
Of 8 feet.
Yeah, and that's what
the-
this proposal
The
is.
driving lanes would be more
Yep, that
narrow.
proposal is actually the original one, Jake.
Yeah,
And-
so it's on
and so-
one side.
Yeah, so we would deviate and we would just have the parking on one side and 2 bike lanes and 2 travel lanes, essentially. Yep,
And the travel lanes would get narrower. or-
yeah, potentially, yep.
Which
How
might
narrow
slow
can the
down
travel
traffic.
lanes be?
Trying to think,
Is it
They go
10 or
down to
11? It's,
Is there 11 right
This
now?
is 11,
11
yeah.
on here.
yeah,
that's pretty close. I know that it's,
yeah.
thank you, legal minimum. Okay, well, we do have a motion that is waiting for a second.
I will second.
That Jason just made, or that I missed before. Okay, so we are voting on whether or not we want to lay this over until February to come back with more informed information. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moved, let's do it. And we'll move on to the next thing on our agenda.
210 driving, 1 parking, 2 bike is 36 feet.
The
Same
meeting-
time next month.
It's
meaning-
always on the second, the first Monday of the month.
Yep, 6 PM in
At
this
6
room.
o'clock
Yep.
in this
Comes out to
room.
40 though, too.
We don't get,
But just so you know, I think only 2 of us got a
8 times
letter.
2 is 16.
And none of us ever got a letter about the bike
26.
lane, just so you people know that.
38.
Okay.
Oh, 38.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The city
Yes.
website has the meeting schedule. City website.
Okay, moving on.
It's 40.
And
So this is
wanna know
40,
what the
so we
speed
don't need
is
30 just
along
down
there?
36.
Um,
I mean, this
but
proposal
he
is
got picked up right.
what it would
How
be.
you like herding
cats?
Yeah.
Oh, that's like
Police officer.
Okay, we need to move on with our meeting.
I'm just telling what the speed
Thank
limit
you.
is.
Thank you.
It's 25, but she was going like 10 over. But most of them.
Thank you.
go to-
Okay, moving on.
Okay, next thing on our agenda, and Stephen can make the briefest update you've ever heard. You listen to this.
Yes, this one will be brief because I've not gotten the reports yet, the final reports for the environmental studies projects from last semester. So as soon as I get those, I'll share them with council, plan commission, and SAB. I just haven't gotten them yet, so.
Awesome job. Can you do it again? Environmental Leadership Award update.
That's been posted on the city website. I have not gotten any new nominations beyond the first one that we've gotten. I think we were going to keep it open until the end of this month.
That's what the website says.
Yep.
I looked.
Yep, and then, so we'll try to keep going on that schedule, close out the nomination, the application period at, on the 31st, basically.
Steve, how did we notify people about that award opportunity? Remind me, how do people know about that?
Oh, about the leadership award?
Yep.
I put it on the website. We've been trying to do some social media stuff too.
Okay.
So that's been the primary way that we've done it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. The next thing on the agenda, Oshkosh Farmers Market handout. Oh my,
There.
we do have.
Share.
Awesome. I didn't know we'd have that.
Fair.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll hold it up too. So essentially it's two-sided. Yes, I know my lines don't add up. It's fine. It'll be fixed. So essentially it would be front and back. I did take recommendation from Lurton's little sheet he gave me last time on the,
Is that 4 up?
yeah, so it'd be 4 per sheet.
Okay, how about we just take one of those and tear it into 4 so we can all see it?
It'd be front and back. The goal then would just be that people could obviously read. Yeah, the lines don't add up though. Sorry. I was
Close enough.
in a rush.
Close enough.
But yeah, so that's essentially what I came up with. I took recommendations. Thank you, Pat, for sending out some more. I did take advice from our last meeting though and did consolidate some things. But let me know again if you have feedback. And then the back side is kind of a little bit about us, a little like personal plug as well. I did use the City of Oshkosh logo because I've seen other boards do it on their handouts. So I just said like join us at a meeting, we listed when the meetings are, where they are, and then also listed the Oshkosh media for people who may not be able to make it to our meetings. Maybe this time doesn't work for them. Maybe transportation is an issue. Who knows? Also
Buses don't run this late.
Correct. So I also put the Facebook logo on there. We're not up and running yet, but we will be soon. But yeah.
Speaking to social media, you and Emily have had your meeting.
Yes, we have chatted. I have feedback from her essentially on just how to set it up and how to do it within city guidelines. Essentially, we just can't use any city logos like for our Facebook picture or anything. If you go on Oshkosh Media and ever watch some of our meetings, they have a cute little image. It's like a light bulb and there's like a plant growing inside the light bulb. It's really cute. And I found that image. So I was thinking of just using that. That way
Sure.
at least we correlate with how we're being presented through Oshkosh Media. Those are my current thoughts.
And you will okay that with Emily first, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yes.
She also said to list our page though as like the City of Oshkosh Sustainability Advisory Board, so we can use that in the name of the page, but just be really careful with logo use. So I also have all of her contact info, so if we ever have questions or concerns, we can just shoot her an email. But yeah. Steve and I still have to sit down to actually create the page. It'll be tied through the Sustainability Advisory Board email. That will be the ownership of it. However, I will be the administrator of the page through my personal email and Facebook account. That's how other boards have done it. Emily said that's totally fine. That's what she actually recommends. That way, if something were to happen, if I were to move for example, and wouldn't be on the board anymore. That way it's still tied to the city. And then all of the notifications and stuff would go through the Sustainability Advisory Board email account and therefore follow public record.
Nicely done, thank you. There are some city guidelines as far as how things can look when they're printed too.
Correct.
And those have been shared with you?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm just pretty much going to send whatever to Emily all the time.
Okay,
She's
sounds
really nice.
She is. She's good to work with.
Yes. She also offered to do an interview with myself on Oshkosh Media whenever we launch our page as free promotion. So
Good.
Wonderful. Having had your television debut already, you're all set. Okay, excellent job.
Thank you.
Agenda items for a future meeting. I think we have one for February already.
Yep.
I'm thinking it might be the West Haven Bike Plan.
We'll have a Facebook update too.
And any of these that we don't get through tonight?
So is the beekeeping, is that something that we want to talk about next month, or is that something that's kind of going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, we've been working on that as staff, and that's part of why I haven't brought it back yet, because there's still some questions. But I'm gonna try to get it on here as soon as I can.
Okay.
That gentleman that spoke, when Nathan, he talked a little bit with us, and so that's some stuff that I want to look at too, do some research. So there's a few of those types of things that are still being worked out before I'm comfortable bringing it back and putting it in the packets and discussing it. But if I can, I'll put it on.
So we'll try for February for that, but it will depend a little bit on legal, I take it.
Yeah, it'll depend on them, me, to be honest. So I'll get as far as I can, and then if we can get a draft finalized, then we'll proceed and bring it here. Otherwise, we'll, bring it when we can.
I know other times before we had the bee ordinance at all, beekeeping ordinance at all, there was a concern that bees have to be purchased in the very early spring. Is there
They have to be purchased during the winter time in order to reserve them for the early spring. So
Has that deadline already passed?
no.
Is it
Coming
imminent?
up closely, though. It's coming up closely.
Okay, well, we're on it as quickly as we can, and we will get back to you as soon as we can with that. Good to know. Okay, then, our next meeting will be Monday, February 4th, right here, as we shared with people earlier. And I would accept a motion to adjourn to workshop, please.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's do it. Okay.
Before we